The train screeched to a halt in the dusty Wyoming station, sending a gust of cinders across the platform. Evelyn stepped down carefully, her worn satchel clutched to her chest. The long journey west had left her exhausted, but her heart pounded harder from the fear of the unknown. Letters from a widowed rancher named Thomas Hale had promised safety and a chance to start over, though she wore a bonnet that shadowed her face. Thomas noticed the faint yellowing marks on her wrist and cheek echoes of a life she refused to speak of. He tipped his hat with quiet respect, sensing her need for gentleness more than questions. Thomas offered his hand as they walked toward a waiting buckboard. "Welcome to Wind Hollow," he said in a voice steady as the surrounding hills. Evelyn hesitated, searching his expression for any sign of pity or judgment, and found only calm assurance. The landscape stretched wide golden grass, distant mountains, a sky the color of polished steel. It felt like a place where old pain could finally loosen its grip. The ride to the ranch was silent, except for the creak of harness leather and the steady clop of hooves. Evelyn kept her gaze on the horizon, where bands of sunlight broke through dark clouds. Thomas sensed her caution. He spoke of the land of the cattle drives and the spring planting, careful not to pry into her past. His respect became the first layer of trust she'd known in years. At the ranch house, a weathered but welcoming homestead, Thomas's sister Margaret greeted Evelyn with a warm embrace and a hot meal. The simple kindness nearly unraveled Evelyn's composure. She excused herself to the small guest room, where she pressed trembling hands to her eyes, surprised to feel something close to relief. Days turned into weeks. Evelyn found solace in early mornings, when the scent of dew-damp sage filled the air. She helped Margaret in the garden, mended shirts, and gradually let laughter return to her voice. Thomas worked from dawn until after sunset, but always found a moment to share coffee with her on the porch. Speaking softly of the stars or the coming calving season, one evening, a sudden storm swept across the plains, rattling windows and shrouding the sky in darkness. Lightning cracked like a warning. Evelyn startled, old memories flashing, but Thomas lit a lantern and sat beside her without a word. His steady presence calmed her faster than any comfort she had ever known. When the rain subsided, Evelyn ventured outside to find the land washed clean, the air sharp and new. Thomas joined her, their shoulders brushing. He finally said, "You don't have to tell me anything you're not ready to. Just know you're safe here." Those words broke the dam. Tears slid down her cheeks as she whispered a simple thank you. Over the next months, trust blossomed into affection. They rode the pasture together, her confidence growing with each sunrise. The ranch, once merely a refuge, became a place of shared purpose. Evelyn began to imagine a life not defined by fear, but by the vast horizon, and the quiet man who treated her as an equal. One crisp autumn evening, beneath a sky spilling with stars, Thomas turned to her with a shy but resolute smile. "Evelyn," he said, "I'd be honored if you'd stay in it because you have to, but because you choose to." Her heart swelled. This was not a rescue, but a partnership she freely embraced. They married when winter's first snow dusted the valley. Friends and neighbors gathered in celebration. Evelyn walked down the aisle of pine boughs and lanterns without a single bruise, inside or out. The journey west had begun as escape, but it ended as a new beginning one, forged not in fear, but in trust, respect, and a love that healed them both. Years later, Evelyn stood on the same platform where her journey had begun, the sun painting the prairie in molten gold. Beside her, Thomas held their young daughter, while their son chased a tumbleweed across the boards. The station master tipped his hat in greeting, and Evelyn felt a quiet astonishment at the distance she had traveled, measured not in miles, but in peace. The echoes of fear were long gone, placed by the sound of children's laughter and the steady heartbeat of a home they had built together as twilight deepened. The ranch lights flickered on, casting a warm glow across the open land. Evelyn watched her children race toward the corral, their laughter ringing through the cool evening air. Thomas joined her on the porch, sliding an arm around her shoulders, his presence still as steady as the day he'd first said, "You're coming with me." In the hush that followed, She realized the bruises of her past had faded into memories, replaced by the gentle certainty of a life she had chosen, and a love that had chosen her just as fiercely. Months later, the once silent ranch was alive with the clatter of hooves and the sweet chaos of family gatherings. Evelyn stood in the doorway of the big house, breathing in the scent of hay and fresh bread, marveling at how the wind-swept plains now felt like the safest place on earth. Thomas met her gaze from across the yard, his crooked smile carrying the same quiet promise he'd made on that first day, that her scars would never define her. Only her strength would. In that moment, she knew every mile of the journey had led her exactly home, under a sky streaked with sunset gold and soft lavender. Evelyn felt the gentle tug of belonging settle deep in her chest. Children's laughter rang across the fields as Thomas approached, wiping the day's work from his calloused hands, his eyes warm and unwavering. They walked side by side toward the old oak where the prairie breeze whispered through the leaves. Every step, a testament to the life they had built from pain, resilience, and quiet devotion. Though the past still echoed in faint memories, the present wrapped them in a peace she once thought impossible, proving that love steady and patient can turn even the harshest soil into a place where hope blooms. As the evening deepened into a canopy of stars, Evelyn and Thomas lingered on the porch, the soft creak of rocking chairs, keeping time with the distant song of crickets. The ranch lay quiet, a silhouette of hard-won serenity, while the warm glow of a lantern cast a gentle halo around them. Thomas reached for her hand, his rough palm a steady reminder of every trial they had overcome together. In that shared silence, Evelyn felt the last traces of her old fear melt away, replaced by a steadfast certainty. No matter how fierce the storms ahead, they would face them side by side. Hearts rooted in the enduring soil of love and hard-earned peace. Weeks later, Evelyn walked through the bustling ranch house that now echoed with laughter instead of lonely wind. She had taken charge of the kitchen and the small garden out back, finding purpose in each task and confidence in every decision. Thomas watched her with quiet admiration, marveling at how the woman who once arrived bruised and weary now stood tall and radiant, her eyes reflecting a newfound strength. Together, they planned the coming seasons, expanding the herd, repairing the barn, and maybe, when the time felt right, starting a family. Their home, once marked by emptiness, now pulsed with warmth and the promise of countless tomorrows built on trust and love. On a crisp spring morning, Evelyn stepped onto the porch and inhaled the scent of fresh rain on the prairie grass. Birds trilled in the cottonwoods while the sun cast a gentle glow across the ranch. Thomas joined her, a steaming cup of coffee in each hand, and they shared a quiet smile that needed no words. The bruises of her past were long faded, replaced by the strength of someone who had survived and chosen happiness. As they looked out over the grazing cattle, Evelyn felt an unshakable sense of belonging. This land, this life, and this love were hers now. Not as a fragile guest, but as an equal partner in every sunrise to come. That evening, the ranch house glowed with warm lamplight as the scent of cornbread drifted from the kitchen. Evelyn set the table while Thomas stoked the fire, their movements naturally in sync after so many shared days. Outside, the prairie wind whispered across the open fields, carrying a promise of steady seasons ahead. When Thomas slipped an arm around her waist and rested his chin on her shoulder, she felt a quiet certainty. The fear and loneliness she once carried had finally given way to trust, laughter, and a love as wide and steadfast as the endless western sky. As winter's first snow began to fall, Evelyn watched the flakes swirl beyond the frosted window pane. The distant hills softened to gentle white humps. She remembered arriving in that same house bruised and trembling, her heart full of dread, and marveled at the quiet strength that now pulsed in her chest. Thomas entered with an armload of wood, a dusting of snow on his hat, and the easy grin she'd grown to cherish. When he placed a steaming mug of cocoa into her hands, their fingers lingered together, a silent promise that whatever storms lay ahead, they would face them side by side, stronger than any past that had once tried to break them. Later that night, the ranch house glowed with a warmth Evelyn once thought she'd never feel again. The fireplace crackled, while Thomas gently strummed an old guitar, its soft notes mingling with the hiss of the wind outside. She leaned against his shoulder, the scent of pine and wood smoke wrapping around them like a protective blanket. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt not just safe, but truly alive, free from fear. Free to dream of a life built on mutual respect and quiet devotion. As the melody drifted through the room, she realized that this unexpected love story wasn't about being rescued. It was about finding the courage to trust and to begin again, together, as the days rolled into weeks. Evelyn discovered the ranch was more than just land and livestock. It was a sanctuary where her spirit could finally breathe. Morning sunrises painted the sky in hues of gold and rose as she and Thomas worked side by side. Their laughter mingling with the lowing of cattle and the distant call of meadowlarks, every shared meal and quiet evening deepened their bond, weaving a tapestry of trust and affection stronger than either had known before. Evelyn felt her bruises, those on her skin and those buried in her heart, fade into memory, replaced by the steady rhythm of a life built on mutual care, honest work, and a love that needed no words to prove it was real. By the time the first wildflowers pushed through the thawing earth, Evelyn hardly recognized the woman she had once been. The fear that had clung to her like a second skin was replaced by a calm strength born from days of hard work and gentle companionship. Thomas never demanded more than she wished to give. Instead, he offered quiet support, teaching her to ride across the wide, windswept plains and to mend fences with her own capable hands. Evenings found them on the porch, watching the horizon blush beneath the setting sun. Their silences as warm and easy as conversation. In the vast expanse of the prairie, Evelyn discovered not only safety, but the profound truth that she was no longer merely surviving. She was finally, fully alive. Spring deepened into a warm, golden summer, and the ranch became a sanctuary where Evelyn's laughter rang as clearly as the meadowlarks in the morning sky. She helped Thomas tend to the horses, her once tentative hands now steady and sure. While the scent of wild sage drifted on the breeze, neighbors who had first come only to satisfy their curiosity began to visit often, drawn by the easy warmth the couple shared. Around the long wooden table, Evelyn found herself telling stories, her voice confident and bright, no longer shadowed by fear. In Thomas's quiet presence and the boundless prairie light, she felt a strength that was wholly her own, as if every sunrise promised not just another day, but a life she had chosen and rebuilt with unwavering grace. As the harvest moon rose above the endless prairie, Evelyn walked the fence line with Thomas, their boots brushing against the tall grass that swayed like waves under silver light. The bruises that once marked her skin had faded long ago, but the memory of them gave her an unshakable resolve to help others find the same safety she had discovered. Together, they planned a shelter in town for women seeking refuge, a place where courage could blossom just as it had for her. The air was cool and fragrant with sage, and when Thomas slipped his arm around her shoulders, she felt the steady heartbeat of a man who had offered not just protection but partnership. Under that vast, star-scattered sky, Evelyn knew that love rooted in kindness and quiet strength had turned her journey of survival into a story of freedom and unbreakable hope. Months later, the shelter they dreamed of stood proudly beside the little church on Main Street, its freshly painted white walls glowing against the morning sun. Women and children arrived timid and fearful, carrying only small bundles and heavy hearts. But Thomas greeted each one with the same gentle steadiness he had once shown Evelyn. Inside, laughter began to echo through the hallways as safety and trust slowly replaced dread. Evelyn organized classes on reading, sewing, and the small trades that could give each woman her own start, while Thomas taught simple carpentry and shared stories of resilience by the warm stove. Every evening, as lantern light spilled across the wooden porch, Evelyn would pause and watch the stars, her hand resting over the life, growing quietly within her, proof that even the deepest wounds could give way to new beginnings when compassion lit the path forward. As winter's first snow drifted across the prairie, Evelyn and Thomas stood hand in hand outside the bustling shelter, marveling at how their small idea had become a refuge of hope. Children's laughter mixed with the faint ring of the chapel bell. Carrying a melody of second chances through the crisp night air, the townsfolk, once skeptical, now donated food, blankets, and time, inspired by the couple's quiet determination. Thomas glanced at Evelyn, her cheeks rosy and eyes bright, and felt a warmth deeper than any hearth gratitude for the day he had whispered, "You're coming with me?" And for every moment since, that had proven love and kindness stronger than any shadow of the past.